You know, every March 8th, we celebrate International Women's Day. It's a huge deal all around the world. But behind this day that we all know is the pretty much untold story of one incredible woman. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the activist who kicked the whole thing off. Okay, so let's just ask the question straight up. We all celebrate the day, right? But how many of us can actually name the person who first came up with the idea? I mean, who had that vision to turn a simple idea into a global movement for equality?
Well, her name was Clara Zetkin, a socialist, a feminist, a journalist, and just a fierce, fierce opponent of injustice. And her story, you'll see, is maybe more relevant today than it has ever been.
So how did this one day even happen? It definitely wasn't an accident. It all started with a very specific proposal at a really important moment in history. Check this out. It's 1910, and Zetkin is at this big conference in Copenhagen. She gets up and proposes an idea. What if we had one special day every single year in every country to push for women's demands? And guess what? The idea was a huge hit, unanimously accepted. Then, just 1 year later, boom, the first celebrations kicked off. And from there, it just grew and grew into the global event we all know today. But here's the thing. Clara Zetkin's story is so much bigger than just this one day. So let's dig a little deeper and get to know who she really was. Okay, so she was born in Germany way back in 1857, and her worldview was shaped really early on. Her mom was a teacher and a big advocate for women's education, so that was a huge influence. But what really lit a fire in her was seeing the Industrial Revolution up close, the awful pay, the dangerous jobs for women and kids. That's what sparked her political awakening and really forged her core belief system. And that belief system, well, it drove a whole lifetime of activism. For her, creating one special day was really just one tool in a much, much bigger fight. This quote right here, this is her entire philosophy in a nutshell. For Zetkin, you couldn't have true gender equality in a society that was fundamentally unequal. She saw women's rights and workers' rights as like two sides of the very same coin, and you had to fight for both at the same time. So what did her fight actually look like? Well, you can kind of break it down into three main pillars. First, she went after political power. She was a relentless advocate for women's right to vote. Second, she fought for economic power, better pay, safer working conditions. And third, she understood the power of information. For more than 20 years, she edited a newspaper called Equality, inspiring thousands of women all over Europe to get involved. But her lifelong fight for equality would eventually lead her to confront one of the absolute darkest ideologies of the 20th century. Now, this is a part of her story that often gets forgotten, but honestly, it might be her most courageous chapter. I mean, just look at this. The contrast is absolutely stark. Zetkin's entire life was about democracy, social equality, and everyone having a voice. The Nazi ideology that was gaining steam was the complete opposite. Authoritarian, supremacist, and dead set on forcing women back into purely domestic roles. It was a direct threat to literally everything she had ever fought for. Okay, so picture this. The year is 1932. The Nazi Party is gaining terrifying momentum in Germany. Clara Zetkin is now 75 years old, and she happens to be the oldest member of the Reichstag, the German parliament. Now, tradition said that gave her the right to give the opening speech. She absolutely knew it might be her last chance to speak freely. So, facing a parliament that was packed with hostile, uniformed Nazis, she stood up and delivered this powerful condemnation. She called fascism exactly what it was, a force of violence and oppression that would completely erase decades of progress. It was just an unbelievable act of bravery. And tragically, her warnings came true. When the Nazis grabbed power in 1933, Zetkin had to flee into exile in the Soviet Union. She passed away just a few months later, never getting to see the defeat of the very ideology she so bravely stood up against. So after this whole lifetime of struggle that ended in exile, what is her legacy, and why is it so important for us to remember her story right now? Let's just quickly recap what she did. 1, she gave us International Women's Day. 2, she was a major voice for women's right to vote. 3, she connected that fight to the bigger struggle for social justice. And 4, she courageously stood up to fascism when it was incredibly dangerous to do so. And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? Every single time we celebrate March 8th, we are, whether we realize it or not, honoring the spirit of a woman who truly believed in a better, more just world, and was willing to fight for it right up until her very last breath. Which really leaves us with this final thought. Clara Zetkin's struggle was all about the intertwined values of equality and democracy. Nearly a century after she died, in a world that is still very much grappling with these exact same issues, what can we learn from her unwavering commitment? How is that fight still ours to continue today?